I assumed that Thanksgiving dinner would be just another night of being treated like the extra child in my wealthy family. That changed the moment I thanked my grandfather for his check of $300. He stopped carving the turkey and dropped a truth that turned the dining room into a battlefield. The thief was not a stranger. The thief was sitting right there at the table, smiling and raising a glass to me. My name is Brooke Allen, and entering the Myers Park neighborhood in Charlotte always felt less like visiting family and more like trespassing on a movie set where I had not been cast. The oaks lining the streets were ancient and imposing, arching over driveways filled with cars that cost more than my entire college education. I gripped the steering wheel of my 10-year-old sedan, the leather peeling under my palms, and tried to steady my breathing. I was 34 years old. I was an adult woman with a job, an apartment, and a life I was generally proud of. Yet the moment I turned onto the winding drive of my mother's estate, I reverted to being the disappointment, the ugly duckling that never quite turned into a swan, just a slightly more functional duck. My mother, Celeste Allen, was already waiting on the porch as if she had been tracking my approach on a radar system designed to detect mediocrity. She was dressed in a shade of cream that would have been ruined by a single drop of reality. As I pulled up, she did not wave, she did not smile. She simply made a sharp, cutting motion with her hand, pointing toward the side of the house. I rolled down the window. The air smelled of expensive mulch and wood smoke. "Don't park in the front, Brooke," Celeste said, her voice tight. "Grant and Sienna are bringing the new Range Rover. We need the driveway clear for photos later. Put that thing behind the garage, way behind it." "Happy Thanksgiving to you too, Mom," I said, though the words tasted like ash. I did as I was told. I drove my rattling car around the back, hiding it behind the detached 3-car garage like a dirty secret. When I walked back around to the front door, I smoothed down my dress. It was a simple navy wrap dress I had bought on sale at a department store. I thought it looked nice. I knew, however, that inside this house, it would look like a rag. Inside, the house was temperature-controlled to a level of crispness that felt unnatural. My sister, Sienna, was standing in the foyer. At 29, Sienna was the family masterpiece. She was blonde, perfectly toned, and currently posing for a selfie in the hallway mirror. She wore a dress that shimmered like liquid gold, cut low enough to be daring but expensive enough to be classy. "Brooke!" she cried out. Though she did not move to hug me, she just angled her face to the light. "You made it. We were worried that old car of yours finally gave up the ghost on the highway." "It runs fine, Sienna," I said, forcing a smile. "Grant says those old engines are basically ticking time bombs," she said, finally turning to look at me. Her eyes scanned my outfit, stopping at my shoes. They were sensible heels. "Oh, you wore those? Brave." Grant Hale, her husband, emerged from the living room holding a tumbler of amber liquid. He was 36, handsome in a way that felt manufactured, with teeth that were too white and eyes that never seemed to match his smile. He worked in high-level finance, a job title that seemed to involve a lot of golf and vague explanations about market volatility. "Brooke," Grant said, nodding. "Good to see you. How is the public sector treating you? Still saving the world one minimum wage paycheck at a time?" "I teach music, Grant," I corrected him, stepping past them to hang up my coat. "And I enjoy it." "Cute," Grant said, taking a sip of his drink. "It is cute that you can afford to have passion projects. The rest of us have to worry about the yield on our portfolios." We moved into the dining room, which had been set up like a photo spread for a lifestyle magazine. The china was bone white with gold rims. The crystal glasses caught the light of the chandelier. There were name cards at every seat, calligraphy swirling on heavy cardstock. I found my seat at the far end, naturally. The dinner conversation followed the usual script. It was a performance, and I was the audience that had not paid for a ticket. Celeste talked about the renovations to the guest house, complaining that the Italian marble had taken 6 weeks to arrive. Sienna talked about their upcoming trip to the Maldives, emphasizing that they were flying private because commercial airlines had become simply unlivable. Grant talked about a merger he was overseeing, using words like leverage and hostile, with a disturbing amount of glee. I ate my turkey in silence. The food was delicious, cooked by a caterer, of course, but it sat heavy in my stomach. Every few minutes, the spotlight would turn to me, not to shine, but to burn. Tss. Brooke, Celeste said, dabbing her mouth with a linen napkin. Are you still living in that apartment complex near the university? I saw on the news there was a robbery 2 streets over. Honestly, I don't know how you sleep at night. It is a safe neighborhood. Mom, I said, and it is close to the community center where I volunteer. Volunteer, Grant scoffed. You volunteer, and you work a low-paying job. You really are allergic to money, aren't you, Brooke? Sienna giggled. She is just authentic, Grant. Isn't that the word? Authentic poverty. They laughed, a light, tinkling sound that filled the high ceilings of the room. I gripped my fork until my knuckles turned white. This was the dynamic. I was the cautionary tale. I was the failure they kept around to make their own success look brighter. Enough, a gravelly voice cut through the laughter. We all turned to the head of the table. Henry Caldwell, my grandfather, was 77 years old. He was the source of the money that bought the marble, the Range Rover, and the gold-rimmed china. He had started with a hardware store and built a real estate empire with his bare hands. He was a man of few words, and unlike the rest of the family, he did not wear his wealth like a costume. He wore a simple button-down shirt, and his hands were still rough. He was looking at me. His eyes were the only warm thing in the room. How is the work, Brooke? Henry asked. The real work, not the teaching. I felt a lump in my throat. Henry was the only one who remembered, the only one who asked. It is going well, Grandpa, I said, my voice softening. I have the business plan finished for the Arts Center. I found a potential location in North Charlotte. An old warehouse. It needs work, but the bones are good. We want to offer free music and art classes to kids in the district and vocational training for adults in the evening. A place to help people stand on their own feet. A charity case, Celeste muttered, swirling her wine. Another drain on resources. It is not charity. Mom, I said, looking at her. It is empowerment. It is giving people tools, just like Grandpa had tools. Henry nodded slowly. He was carving a second slice of turkey, his movements precise. A warehouse, you say? Good light? Incredible light, I said, feeling a spark of hope. High windows. We could put studios in the loft. It would change the neighborhood. Sienna rolled her eyes, checking her phone under the table. Sounds dusty and expensive. How are you going to pay for a warehouse on a teacher's salary, selling bake sale cookies? Grant smirked. She is probably hoping for a grant or a miracle. I looked down at my plate. I had been waiting for the right moment all night. I reached into my purse, which was sitting by my feet, and pulled out the small, off-white envelope I had received in the mail 2 days ago. It was my birthday card from Grandpa. Inside, there had been a check. It was not a fortune. To people like Grant and Sienna, it was probably what they spent on a Tuesday lunch. But to me, it was everything. It was acknowledgement. It was support. Actually, I said, my voice trembling slightly, I wanted to say thank you, Grandpa. The table went quiet. For the birthday card, I continued, looking directly at him. And the check, the $300 meant a lot to me. It is going straight into the fund for the building inspection. It gets me one step closer. I smiled at him, genuine and open. Thank you for believing in it. The silence that followed was not the respectful silence of a toast. It was the awkward, suffocating silence of a social faux pas. Grant let out a short, sharp laugh. He covered his mouth with his napkin, shaking his head. $300? Sienna repeated, her voice pitched high with amusement. Oh, Brooke, you are serious? You are announcing a $300 check at Thanksgiving dinner? My face burned hot. I am thanking him. It was a kind gift. It is pocket change, Grant said, leaning back in his chair. Jesus, Brooke, have some dignity. You are making it sound like he bought you a house. It is $300. I tipped the valet more than that last week. Grant, Celeste warned, but she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me with pure disdain. Brooke, put the envelope away. We are trying to have a nice dinner. Do not embarrass us by groveling over pennies. I am not groveling, I said, my voice rising. I am being grateful, something none of you seem to understand. Grateful for scraps, Sienna sneered. It is pathetic, really. You act like a stray dog getting a bone. Sienna, Henry's voice boomed. He stopped carving the turkey. He set the knife and fork down on the platter with a heavy clatter. The sound echoed in the room. He did not look at Sienna. He did not look at Grant or Celeste. He looked straight at me. His expression was unreadable. It wasn't pity. It wasn't the warmth I had seen a moment ago. It was something else, a profound, terrifying confusion that hardened into realization right before my eyes. Brooke, Henry said, his voice low and steady. What did you say? I said thank you, I whispered, suddenly feeling very small. For the check. The check, Henry repeated. For $300. Yes, I said. I know it isn't millions, Grandpa, but I appreciate it. I really do. Henry stared at me. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He looked at his daughter, Celeste. Then he looked at Grant, whose smirk was faltering just a fraction. Finally, his gaze landed back on me. I did not send you a check for $300, Henry said. I blinked, confused. What? But I got it. It was in your card, signed by you. I signed a check, Henry said, and his voice was getting louder, sharper. I signed a check for your birthday, Brooke, but it was not for $300. Sienna froze, her wine glass halfway to her mouth. Celeste stiffened, her eyes darting to Grant. Dad, Celeste said, her voice high and nervous. Let's not do this now. You know how you get with numbers lately. You probably just forgot. I did not forget, Henry snapped. He stood up, leaning his hands on the table. He looked like a titan now, the old power flaring up. I sold the plot of land in South End last month. I didn't tell you vultures because I knew you would want a cut. He pointed a shaking finger at me. I sent you $500,000, Brooke, Henry roared. I sent you $500,000 to build that center. I wrote the check myself. The silence that hit the room was absolute. It was violent. My heart stopped. $500,000. That is impossible, I stammered. The check. It said 300. It was written out. $300. Henry's face turned a shade of red I had never seen. He looked around the table, his eyes wild. Then someone changed it. Someone stole the check I wrote and replaced it with a scrap to keep you quiet. I looked at the faces around me. Celeste was pale, her mouth a thin line. Sienna had dropped her fork. It hit the plate with a chime that sounded like a bell tolling. And Grant. Grant was staring at the tablecloth. His jaw clenched so hard, a muscle was jumping in his cheek. $500,000, I whispered. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't the extra child. I wasn't the poor relation. I was the heir to a dream. And someone at this table, someone eating this turkey and drinking this wine, had intercepted it. They had taken a life-changing fortune and swapped it for $300, thinking I was so pathetic, so desperate, that I would just be grateful for the crumbs. They hadn't just stolen money. They had stolen my future. They had looked at my dream and decided it was worth nothing. I looked at Grant. He slowly raised his eyes to meet mine. The coldness in them was gone, replaced by a sharp, predatory calculation. Grandpa, Grant said, his voice smooth, calm, and terrifyingly reasonable. I think you are confused. We should talk about your medication. Don't you Henry snarled. But the war had already started, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't just observing it, I was the target. The echo of my grandfather's shout seemed to rattle the crystal chandelier above us. $500,000. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, stripping away the veneer of polite society that my mother had spent decades lacquering over our family. For a second, nobody moved. It was a freeze frame of panic. Then gravity reasserted itself. Sienna's hand jerked. The stem of her wine glass snapped between her fingers. The bowl of the glass hit the edge of the table and shattered, sending a spray of expensive Cabernet across the pristine white tablecloth. It looked like a gunshot wound spreading on the fabric. "Oh my God," Sienna gasped, but she wasn't looking at the wine. Her eyes were wide, darting frantically between Grant and our mother. Grant did not move. He did not jump to help his wife. He sat frozen, his hand still gripping his napkin. I watched the muscles in his jaw bunch and release. Bunch and release. It was the only sign that the smooth, polished facade of the successful financier was cracking. His eyes were fixed on Henry, assessing, calculating, like a predator realizing the prey still had teeth. Celeste, my mother, was the first to recover. She was a woman who had built her entire life on the ability to pretend things were fine when they were clearly burning down. She let out a breathless, trilling laugh that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, Daddy," she said, shaking her head as she reached over to pat Henry's trembling hand. "You really gave us a scare there. 500,000? Goodness, you are getting your numbers mixed up again." Henry pulled his hand away as if she had burned him. "I am not mixed up. Celeste, I sold the South End lot. The payment cleared 3 weeks ago." "The South End lot?" Celeste continued, her voice taking on a soothing, condescending tone, the kind one uses for a toddler having a tantrum. "Daddy, you sold that years ago, remember? You are thinking of $500, maybe 5,000. You wanted to give Brooke a nice little bonus, and in your excitement, you just added a few zeros in your head. It happens. It is part of aging." "I did not add zeros." Henry slammed his fist on the table, making the silverware jump. "I instructed the bank to wire the funds, a direct transfer, $500,000 to Brooke Allen, for the construction of the Arts Center." "Stop it," Grant said. His voice was no longer mocking. It was clinical. He stood up slowly, walking around the table toward Henry. He moved with the authority of a doctor at a scene, though he was nothing of the sort. "Henry, listen to yourself. You are agitated. You are shouting about $500,000 at a Thanksgiving dinner. Does that sound like rational behavior to you?" "It sounds like the truth," I shouted, standing up to join them. My legs felt weak, but anger was propping me up. "If he says he sent it, he sent it. Why are you trying to shut him up?" Grant turned his cold eyes on me. "I'm trying to protect him, Brooke, something you clearly do not care about. Look at him. He is confused. He is having an episode." "I am not having an episode," Henry said, though his voice wavered slightly under the sheer weight of their united front. "I have the documents. I have the confirmation number." "Memory fabrication is very common in the early stages of cognitive decline," Grant said, speaking over him, addressing the room as if he were giving a lecture. "The patient fixates on a number or an idea, usually related to past glories or assets, and convinces themselves it is real. It is a defense mechanism against loss of control." "You are talking about him like he is not here," I snapped. "He is right in front of you." "And he is unwell," Celeste cried out, her face twisting into a mask of tragic concern. "Brooke, stop feeding into this delusion. You are hurting him. You are making him think he has money he does not have, just so you can feel better about your little charity project." "I did not ask for this," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't know about the money until 2 minutes ago, but if he sent it, we need to find out where it went." "It didn't go anywhere because it does not exist," Sienna shrieked. She had pushed her chair back, ignoring the wine dripping onto her gold dress. "God, Brooke, look what you have done. You come in here with your sad stories and your poverty guilt trip, and you get Grandpa so worked up he starts inventing things. You ruin everything." "I ruin everything?" I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. She was trembling, but it wasn't fear for our grandfather. It was terror. Her eyes were not on Henry, they were on her phone. She had pulled it into her lap, hidden beneath the tablecloth. "I went to the bank," Henry insisted, his breathing becoming shallow. "I spoke to the manager, Mr. Henderson. I signed the wire authorization." "Bank," I heard Sienna whisper. It was barely a breath, but the moment the word left Henry's mouth, Sienna's thumbs flew across her screen. I watched her hands under the table. It wasn't the aimless scrolling of a bored dinner guest. It was rapid, precise, frantic. She typed a short message, hit send, and then immediately placed the phone face down on her thigh, her knuckles white. She looked up and caught me watching her. For a split second, the mask slipped. I saw panic, pure, unadulterated guilt. Then she narrowed her eyes and burst into tears. "I can't take this," Sienna sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I worked so hard to make this family perfect. I just wanted a nice holiday. And now Brooke is accusing us of what? Stealing? From our own grandfather?" "I didn't say you stole it," I said quietly, my eyes locked on Sienna. "But you seem very nervous about the possibility." "That is enough," Celeste hissed. She marched over to me, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood. She was trembling with rage. "You have done enough damage for one night. Brooke, I want you out." "Mom, we need to figure this out," I pleaded, gesturing to Henry, who had slumped back in his chair, looking suddenly very old and very tired. "If he thinks he sent that money, we need to check his accounts. We can't just ignore it." "We?" Celeste laughed, a cruel, short sound. "There is no we here. Brooke, Grant handles the family finances. Grant will look into Dad's accounts in the morning and prove that this is all just a senile fantasy. We do not need you sniffing around, trying to scavenge for cash." "I am not scavenging," I yelled, losing my temper finally. "I am trying to protect him from you people. You treat him like a checkbook that is starting to malfunction." "Get out," Celeste screamed, pointing at the door. "Get out of my house. You are jealous. You have always been jealous of Sienna, of Grant, of everything we have built. You can't stand that you failed. So you want to drag us down into the mud with you. Well, I won't have it. Not in this house." "Celeste," Henry said weakly, "let her stay. We need to talk about the wire." "No, Daddy," Celeste said, turning to him and smoothing his hair back, her touch possessive and controlling. "You are tired. You need to rest. Grant is going to take you to the study and pour you a brandy. And we are going to forget this ever happened. We will get you an appointment with Dr. Evans next week. We need to discuss your power of attorney again. Clearly, you are struggling to manage things on your own." Grant nodded solemnly. "It is for the best. Henry, we can't have you making wild transactions in your head. It puts the whole estate at risk." I watched them close ranks. It was a military maneuver. Celeste the commander, Grant the enforcer, Sienna the distraction. They formed a wall around Henry, physically blocking him from me. I looked at my grandfather. He looked small between them. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, but also confused. The gaslighting was working. In just 5 minutes, they had made him doubt his own reality. They had rewritten history before the ink was even dry. "Brooke," Henry whispered. I was sure." "You were sure, Grandpa," I said firmly, ignoring Celeste's hand shoving at my shoulder. "Don't let them tell you otherwise." "Out!" Celeste shrieked, shoving me harder. I stumbled back. I looked at the table, at the ruined dinner, the spilled wine that looked like blood, and the family that looked like strangers. "Fine," I said. "I am going, but this isn't over. Money leaves a trail." I turned and walked out. I didn't grab my coat. I just wanted to be away from the suffocating perfume and the lies. I stepped out onto the porch. The rain had started. A cold, miserable drizzle that soaked through my thin dress in seconds. I walked to the detached garage, my heels sinking into the wet grass because I wasn't allowed on the paved driveway. My car sat there in the shadows, looking old and tired. I got in and slammed the door, locking it immediately, as if Grant might come chasing after me with a contract and a pen. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, shaking. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. $500,000. My grandfather wasn't crazy. I knew that. I had seen the look in his eyes before the doubt crept in. He was sharp. He was specific. He named the bank manager. He named the source of the funds. And I had seen Sienna. I replayed the moment in my head. Henry said bank. Sienna texted someone. Who did you text? Sienna? Who needs to know that the old man remembers? I started the engine. The car sputtered before roaring to life as I backed out, leaving ruts in my mother's perfect lawn. I looked back at the house. The windows were glowing with warm, golden light. From the outside, it looked like a haven, a perfect American family enjoying a holiday feast. Inside, they were currently dissecting the mind of an old man to cover up a felony. I turned onto the main road, the windshield wipers slapping back and forth. If the money didn't come to me, it went somewhere. $500,000 doesn't just vanish into the ether. It has a destination. It has a routing number. It has a beneficiary. And if Sienna was terrified, and Grant was desperate to get power of attorney, that meant the money wasn't just lost. It was stolen. I wasn't just a disappointed granddaughter anymore. I was a witness. You picked the wrong person to rob, I said aloud to the empty car. My voice sounded strange, harder than I had ever heard it. I drove into the night, leaving the wealthy enclave of Myers Park behind. I was going back to my cramped apartment, to my empty bank account, but I was taking something with me that was worth more than their entire estate. I had the truth, and come Monday morning, I was going to the bank. The bank was a fortress of glass and polished steel in the center of uptown Charlotte, a place designed to make you feel small if you did not have 7 figures in your account. I parked my sedan 2 blocks away because I did not want to hand my keys to a valet who would look at my bumper stickers with disdain. I walked back to the entrance where my grandfather was waiting. Henry Caldwell looked different in the daylight. Last night, at the dinner table, he had seemed frail, a victim of gaslighting. Today, standing in his wool coat with a silk scarf knotted at his throat, he looked like the man who had built half the city. He was leaning on his cane, not for support, but like he was ready to use it as a weapon. We entered the lobby at 9 a.m. The air inside smelled of money, a specific mix of industrial carpet cleaner and expensive cologne. We did not wait in the line for the tellers. Henry marched straight to the glass-walled office in the back, the one with the gold nameplate that read Vice President of Private Wealth Management. Mr. Henderson looked up from his desk. He was a man in his 50s with a tan that looked artificial and a smile that did not reach his eyes. When he saw Henry, his smile faltered for a fraction of a second before reassembling itself into a mask of professional concern. Mr. Caldwell? Henderson said, standing up but not coming around the desk to shake hands. This is a surprise. I did not see you on the schedule today. I do not need an appointment to see my own money. Henderson, Henry said, his voice booming slightly in the quiet office. He gestured to me. You know my granddaughter, Brooke. Henderson looked at me. His eyes flickered with recognition, but it was not the polite kind. It was the look of a man who had been briefed. Ms. Allen, Henderson said, nodding curtly. Please, sit down. Although, Mr. Caldwell, I must tell you, I had a conversation with Mr. Hale earlier this morning. My stomach tightened. Grant, of course. He had gotten here first. Electronically, if not physically. Grant Hale called you? Henry asked, lowering himself into the leather chair. He did, Henderson said, clasping his hands on the desk. He expressed some concern that you might be coming in. He mentioned that there has been some confusion regarding your accounts lately. He suggested that for any major inquiries, we should probably wait until he can be present as your financial liaison. The room went deadly silent. I watched Henry's face turn a shade of purple that terrified me, but his voice, when he spoke, was dangerously low. Liaison, Henry repeated. Is Grant my power of attorney, Henderson? Well, no, not officially, but is he a signatory on my personal accounts? No, sir. But given his professional background and the family's concerns, Henry cut him off. I am the client, Henderson, not my son-in-law, not my granddaughter, me. And unless you want me to close every single account I hold with this bank, accounts that I believe constitute a significant portion of your branch's portfolio, you will stop talking about Grant Hale and start doing your job. Henderson paled. He swallowed hard, adjusting his tie. The threat was real, and he knew it. Henry might be old, but money was power, and Henry still held the keys. Of course, Mr. Caldwell, Henderson stammered. I apologize. I was just trying to be helpful. How can I assist you? I want the records of the wire transfer I authorized on November 3rd, Henry said. $500,000. I want to see exactly where it went, and I want a copy of the transfer request form. Henderson typed on his keyboard. The clicking sound was the only noise in the room for a long minute. He frowned, clicked the mouse, and then hit print. The laser printer in the corner hummed to life. He walked over, retrieved the paper, and slid it across the desk to Henry. Here is the transaction record, Henderson said. As you can see, the funds were wired on November 3rd, as requested. Henry put on his reading glasses. He studied the paper, then pushed it toward me. Read it. Brooke, he said. I picked up the sheet. My hands were shaking. I scanned the lines of data until I found the beneficiary field. Beneficiary, Brooke Arts, LLC. Amount, $500,000. Routing number ending in 4092. I stared at the name, Brooke Arts, LLC. I don't understand, I said, looking up at Henderson. I don't have an LLC. I never incorporated a business. Henderson looked at me with a mix of pity and suspicion. The wire instructions were quite specific. Ms. Allen, the account is registered to that business name. Who opened the account? I asked. That would be at the receiving bank, Henderson said. But we have the authorization form here, signed by the account holder. He slid another piece of paper across the desk. It was a photocopy of the internal bank form used to authorize the wire. I looked at the bottom of the page. There was Henry's signature, shaky but legible, and below it, on the line for beneficiary confirmation, was another signature. It was my name, Brooke Allen, and it looked exactly like my signature. I felt the blood drain from my face, the loop of the B, the sharp angle of the A, the way I crossed my double L's. It was perfect. If I didn't know better, I would have sworn I signed it myself. This is a forgery, I whispered. Henderson sighed, leaning back. Ms. Allen, these forms were notarized. If you are suggesting— I am not suggesting, I snapped. I am telling you. Look at the date. November 3rd. What time was this processed? Henderson checked his screen. The timestamp on the intake scan is 2 in the afternoon. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I was at work. I teach music at Harding High School. On November 3rd at 2 in the afternoon, I was conducting a rehearsal for the fall recital. There are 30 students, 2 other teachers, and security camera footage that can prove I was 5 miles away from this bank. Henderson paused. The certainty in my voice seemed to chip away at his skepticism. And look at the address, I said, pointing to the beneficiary address line on the form. 11405, Providence Road. Suite 404. That is not my apartment, I said. That is in the promenade. That is a shopping center. It is a mailbox rental, Henry said. His voice was grim. I know that building. I own the strip mall across the street. I looked at Henry. They set up a shell company, I said, my mind racing. Brooke Arts LLC. They named it almost exactly what I wanted to call the center, so that if you saw the name on a statement, you wouldn't think twice. You would think the money went to me. And they forged your signature to make it look like you accepted the funds, Henry said. So if I ever asked where the money went, they could point to this piece of paper and say, you took it. It is a frame job, I said. They didn't just steal the money. They set me up to take the fall for embezzlement if anyone ever investigated. Henry closed his eyes. He looked pained, not physically, but deeply, in his soul. "The day I came in to sign this," he said slowly, "my cataracts were acting up. The drops the doctor gave me made everything blurry." He opened his eyes and looked at me. "Sienna was with me. She said she would drive me because Celeste was busy. We sat right here in this office." Henry turned to Henderson. "Who filled out the numbers on this form?" "Henderson? I signed it. Yes, but the handwriting on the routing number and the account number, that is not mine." Henderson looked uncomfortable. "Well, your granddaughter, the other one, Mrs. Hale, she assisted you. She said you were having trouble seeing the lines. She filled in the beneficiary details from a slip of paper she had, and you signed the bottom." "She switched the numbers," I said. It was not a question. "She had the real account number for the art center. Or maybe she never did. She wrote in the account number for this fake LLC instead." "And I signed it," Henry whispered. "I signed my own robbery." I looked at the document again. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Sienna had sat there, holding her grandfather's hand, helping him read, while she literally diverted his legacy into a black hole. And Grant? Grant must have been the architect. Sienna was not smart enough to set up an LLC structure and generate a forgery this perfect on her own. This smelled of Grant's finance background. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice steady, "I want a certified copy of this form, and I want the full tracking trace on that wire." I can provide the copies," Henderson said, looking nervous now. "But if you are alleging fraud, I am legally obligated to freeze the accounts and notify the authorities." "Do not freeze anything," Henry ordered. "Not yet." Henderson blinked. "Sir?" "If you freeze the account, they will know we know," I said, understanding Henry's logic instantly. "They will see the alert. If they have access to the receiving account, they will move the money again or destroy the records of who opened the LLC." Henry nodded at me. We were on the same page. "Give us the copies. Henderson, and do not breathe a word of this to Grant Hale. If he calls, you tell him I came in to check my balance and left. If you tell him I looked at this wire, I will sue this bank for facilitating identity theft so fast your head will spin." Henderson moved quickly. 5 minutes later, we walked out of the bank with a manila folder containing the proof of the crime. We sat in my car, the engine idling. The rain had stopped, but the sky was a bruised purple. "We should go to the police," Henry said. He was gripping the folder so hard the edges were crumpling. "We have the forgery. We have your alibi." "No," I said. I stared at the dashboard. "Not yet." "Why not? They forged your name, Brooke." "Because right now, all we can prove is that someone forged my name and money went to a company called Brooke Arts." I explained. "We can prove Sienna wrote the numbers, but she will claim it was a mistake, or that I gave her the wrong slip of paper. She will say, 'Brooke told me the number. I just wrote what she said,' and then she will point to the fact that the company is in my name." I turned to face him. "They set this up so that if it blew up, I would be the one holding the bomb. If we go to the police now, Grant will spin a story that I set up the LLC. I tricked Sienna into writing the number. And now that I am caught, I am crying forgery. He has the expensive lawyers. I have a public school teacher's salary. Who do you think the district attorney will believe initially?" Henry looked horrified. "He would send you to prison to save himself." "In a heartbeat," I said. "We need more. We need to connect them to that LLC. We need to know who walks into that mailbox store on Providence Road." "The box in the high-end strip mall," Henry mused. "Exactly," I said. "We need to catch them picking up the mail. Or we need to find out whose name is on the rental agreement for that box. We need the fingerprint of the insider." I put the car in gear. The anger from last night had cooled into something solid and heavy in my chest. It wasn't just rage anymore. It was a mission. "Where are we going?" Henry asked. "Providence Road," I said. "I need to see Suite 404, and I think I know someone who works in that shipping center." "You do?" "One of my old students," I said. "Leah, she barely graduated, but she was good at art. I helped her get a portfolio together for a community college application. She works the counter at the mail and ship over there. I saw her post about it on social media last week. Henry looked at the folder in his lap, then at me. A grim smile touched his lips. They thought you were weak. Brooke, he said softly. They forgot you spend your days managing 30 teenagers with instruments. You know how to handle noise. I'm not handling noise, Grandpa, I said, merging into traffic. I'm hunting. We drove south, toward the wealthy suburbs, toward the fake address that held $500,000 of stolen dreams. The hunt was on. The promenade on Providence Road was the kind of shopping center where even the air seemed to cost money. The landscaping was manicured to within an inch of its life, and the cars in the parking lot were exclusively German or Italian engineering. I left Henry in the passenger seat of my sedan, parked discreetly behind a dry cleaner, and walked toward the storefront that held the key to my stolen life. The sign above the door read, Executive Mail and Ship. It wasn't a standard post office. It was a boutique service for people who needed privacy and were willing to pay a premium for it. I pushed open the glass door. A bell chimed, a cheerful sound that felt at odds with the knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The interior was sleek, with polished counters and walls lined with brass mailboxes. Behind the main counter, a girl with bright purple streaks in her hair was wrestling with a label printer. She looked up, annoyed, but her expression shifted instantly when she saw me. Miss Allen? I let out a breath of relief. Leah, it is so good to see you. Leah had been one of my favorite students 2 years ago. She was talented but rough around the edges. A girl who had needed someone to tell her that her sketches were worth something. I had written her recommendation letters and helped her navigate the terrifying bureaucracy of financial aid applications. I saw on Instagram that you were working here, I said, approaching the counter. I was hoping you were on shift today. Yeah, paying the bills, Leah said, grinning. She leaned over the counter. What are you doing in this part of town? You usually stick to the arts district. I have a problem. Leah, I said. I didn't have time for small talk. I lowered my voice, leaning in. And I think the solution is in one of your mailboxes. Leah's smile faded. She glanced around the empty store. What kind of problem? Identity theft, I said. The words tasted like metal. Someone opened a shell company in my name. They are using it to funnel stolen money. The address for that company is right here. Suite 404. Leah stiffened. She looked at the wall of brass boxes behind her. Her eyes flicked to number 404, then back to me. Ms. Allen, you know I can't give out client info, she whispered. My boss is a tyrant. If he catches me looking up a rental agreement for you, I am fired. No questions asked. I am not asking you to give me the file, I said. I am asking you to help me prove I am not the one opening that box. Leah, they stole $500,000. They forged my signature. If I don't find out who is picking up that mail, I could go to prison. Leah's eyes widened. $500,000? Yes, I said. Please, I just need to know who it is. I need to see who has the key. Leah bit her lip. She looked conflicted, her fingers drumming on the countertop. Then, a look of distinct distaste crossed her face. Suite 404, she muttered. Is that the Brook Arts account? Yes, I said, my heart hammering. That is the one. I hate that customer, Leah said flatly. I blinked. You do? She is a nightmare, Leah said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. She comes in here like she owns the place, never says hello, snaps her fingers at me if I'm not fast enough with the package scanner. Last week, she threatened to have me fired because I asked for her ID when she was picking up a registered letter. She said, "Do you know who my husband is? Like that is supposed to mean something to me." I repeated. So it is a woman. Yeah, Leah said. Always wears these giant sunglasses and a scarf, like she is some kind of celebrity trying to avoid the paparazzi. It is ridiculous. Leah, I said, placing my hand on the counter, can you show me the security footage? Just from the last pickup? I need to know if it is who I think it is. Leah looked at the security monitor behind her, then at the camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. "My boss is at lunch," she said. "He won't be back for 40 minutes. She walked to the end of the counter and flipped the sign on the door to "back in 5 minutes. She locked the door and waved me around to the employee side. "Come on," she said. "Fast." I rushed behind the counter. The smell of packing tape and toner was overwhelming. Leah sat at the main computer and pulled up the security archive. "She was here 2 days ago," Leah said, typing rapidly. "November 22nd, around 10 in the morning, she came to pick up a bank statement that required a signature." My pulse was racing. A bank statement. That was the link. That was the proof that the person controlling the LLC was physically intercepting the financial records. "Here," Leah said, pointing to the screen. The video was grainy but clear enough. The timestamp read 10:14 a.m. The front door opened. A woman walked in. She was dressed in a beige trench coat, belted tightly at the waist. She wore a silk scarf wrapped around her head and oversized tortoiseshell sunglasses that covered half her face. She looked like a bad caricature of a spy in a noir film. "Pause it," I said. Leah hit the spacebar. I leaned in, scrutinizing the image. The disguise was good. It obscured her hair color and her facial features. If you didn't know her, you wouldn't be able to identify her. "I can't see her face," I whispered, frustration welling up. "It could be anyone." "Watch," Leah said. "Press play." The video resumed. The woman walked to the counter, right where I was standing now. She slapped a key on the surface. She tapped her foot impatiently while the digital version of Leah went to retrieve a large envelope. The woman reached up to adjust her glasses, and for a split second, the scarf slipped. I saw a flash of blonde hair, but lots of women had blonde hair. It wasn't enough. Then she turned to sign the digital pad. As she turned, she swung her handbag up onto the counter to free her hands. It was a small, structured bag made of dark blue velvet, with a very specific, intricate gold chain strap that looked like intertwined snakes. The clasp was a large, gold sunburst studded with crystals. I gasped. The sound was involuntary, like I had been punched. "Stop," I commanded. "Freeze it right there." Leah paused the video again. The image of the bag was front and center. "Do you recognize her?" Leah asked. "I recognize the bag," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "That is a Gucci Dionysus, the limited velvet edition. My sister, Sienna, bought it 3 weeks ago. She posted an unboxing video on her social media. She bragged that there were only 5 of them in the state." I stared at the screen. Sienna. She had stood in my mother's dining room, crying, accusing me of ruining the family, while that bag, that damning piece of evidence, was probably sitting in her closet upstairs. "She signed for the package," I said, pointing at the screen where the woman's hand was holding the stylus. "She signed Brooke Allen?" "Yep," Leah said. "See?" She clicked a few keys and brought up the transaction log. There, on the digital receipt, was the signature, Brooke Allen, the same forged signature from the bank. "She is pretending to be me," I said. "She comes in here, abuses the staff, signs my name, and collects the bank statements for the company she stole my grandfather's money to fund." "Is she your sister?" Leah asked, her eyes wide. "Yes," I said. "She is—" "Damn," Leah said. "That is cold, Ms. Allen." "Leah, I need this," I said. "I need a copy of this video and a copy of that signature log. If I have this, I can prove she is the one operating the box. The bag ties her to the crime." Leah hesitated for only a second this time. She looked at the frozen image of the rude woman who had snapped her fingers at her. "She called me incompetent," Leah muttered. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket and plugged it into the USB port. "Let's see how competent she thinks I am now." 2 minutes later, I walked out of the store with the flash drive clenched in my fist. It felt hot against my palm. I got back into my car. Henry was waiting, his face pale. "Well?" he asked. "We got her," I said. I jammed the key into the ignition. "We have video of Sienna signing for the bank statements. And she was stupid enough to carry that $5,000 handbag she is so proud of. Henry let out a long, shuddering sigh. Sienna, he whispered. I taught her how to ride a bicycle. I paid for her braces. She is just the runner. Grandpa, I said, staring through the windshield. The pieces were clicking into place with terrifying clarity. Think about it. Sienna is vain. She is greedy. But she is not organized. She can't set up a multi-layered offshore laundering scheme. She just likes to spend the money. Grant, Henry said. The name came out like a curse. It has to be, I said. The structure is too perfect. An LLC with a generic name, a mailbox rental in a high-end district to avoid suspicion, a bank account that requires wire transfers. That is finance stuff. Grant set it up. He sent Sienna to do the dirty work, to sign the papers, to pick up the mail, so that his face never appeared on camera. I gripped the steering wheel. He used her. He knew that if this ever came out, Sienna would be the one on the video. Sienna would be the one with her handwriting on the bank forms. He set up his own wife to be the fall guy. He is a monster, Henry said. He is a thief, I corrected, and he is about to find out that he is not as smart as he thinks he is. I looked at the store one last time. I thought about the way Grant had looked at me at dinner. The arrogance, the condescension. He thought I was nothing. He thought I was just a music teacher who drove a beat-up car and didn't understand how the world worked. He thought he had taken everything. He had taken the money. He had taken my name. They took my name, I said softly. They used Brooke Allen to commit a crime. I put the car in reverse. I am taking it back, I said. I am taking back my name, and I am taking back your money, and I'm going to make sure that when the police finally come, they have the right address. What do we do next? Henry asked. Do we go to the police now? Not yet, I said. We have the connection to Sienna, but we need to nail Grant. If we strike now, Grant will claim he knew nothing about it. He will divorce Sienna, leave her to rot in jail, and walk away with whatever money he has already siphoned off. We need to find the money, Grandpa. We need to see where it went after it left that LLC account. How do we do that? I have a friend, I said. Someone who knows how to find things that people want to keep hidden. I drove out of the promenade, leaving the world of luxury behind. The flash drive in my pocket felt heavy, like a loaded gun. I was ready to fire, but I had to make sure I had the clear shot at the head of the snake, not just the tail. Sienna was done. Her vanity had convicted her. Now, I was coming for Grant. The office of Malik Rowan was located in a brick building on the edge of the industrial district, a stark contrast to the manicured lawns of Myers Park or the polished glass of the bank. It smelled of stale coffee and old paper, a scent that I found oddly comforting because it smelled like the truth. Malik was a man who took up space. He was 6 feet 4 inches of solid muscle, a former homicide detective who had left the force 2 years ago to open his own private investigation firm. He was also the father of Leo, a 16-year-old boy who had been on the verge of dropping out of school until he found his way into my percussion ensemble. I had spent hours tutoring Leo, helping him channel his anger into the drums, and when he walked across the stage at the end of the year with passing grades, Malik had shaken my hand and told me that if I ever needed a buried body found, I just had to ask. I did not need a body found. I needed a life dissected. I sat across from him at his metal desk, the hum of his computer tower filling the silence. I had given him everything, the flash drive with the video of Sienna, the copies of the forged bank wires, the name of the shell company, and, most importantly, the name of the man I suspected was pulling the strings. Grant Hale, Malik said, reading the name off his screen. He leaned back in his chair, the springs groaning. The finance guy, the golden boy. He is not golden, I said. He is rusted. I need to know how deep the corrosion goes. Malik cracked his knuckles. You want the full workup? Financials, employment, surveillance? I want everything, I said. I want to know what he eats for breakfast and who he owes money to by lunch. I need to know why a man who claims to manage millions needs to steal $500,000 from an old man. Give me 48 hours, Malik said. I don't have 48 hours, I replied. My grandfather is vulnerable. Every hour we wait is an hour Grant could be moving that money offshore. Can you give me the preliminary run now? Malik looked at the desperation in my eyes. He nodded once, spun his chair back to his monitors, and began to type. For the next 3 hours, I watched a professional dismantle a myth. Malik had access to databases that regular people did not even know existed. He started with the basics. Employment history. Okay, Malik said, squinting at the screen. Grant Hale, listed as a senior portfolio manager at Sterling Capital. That is what he tells people, right? Yes, I said. He goes there every morning at 7:30. He has a corner office. Malik tapped a key. A red line appeared on his screen. No, Malik said flatly. He does not. I leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean his employment at Sterling Capital was terminated 4 months ago. Malik said, August 12th. It is flagged here in the industry verification system. Terminated? I repeated. He was fired? Separation by mutual agreement, Malik read, his voice dry, which in the corporate world usually means leave quietly or we call the cops. The reason code is listed as compliance violation. That is big. Brooke, that means he broke the rules. Trading with client money, unauthorized risks, something shady. They let him go to avoid a scandal, but he is out. He has not drawn a paycheck since August. I sat back, stunned. For 4 months, Grant had been putting on a suit, kissing Sienna goodbye, and driving off to a job that did not exist. Where does he go? I asked. If he is not at the office, where is he? Malik switched to a surveillance mode, pulling up credit card transaction locations and cell tower pings. Looks like he spends a lot of time at a co-working space in Dilworth, Malik said, and a high-end coffee shop called The Daily Grind. He sits there from 9 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. His laptop is probably connected to the free Wi-Fi. The image was pathetic. Grant Hale, the master of the universe, sitting in a coffee shop nursing a $4 latte, pretending to trade stocks while he was actually just hiding from his wife. Check his finances, I said. If he has no income, how is he paying for the lifestyle? The Range Rover? The trips? The dinners? Malik pulled up the credit report. He let out a low whistle. He isn't paying for them, Malik said. He is juggling them. He turned the monitor so I could see. The screen was a sea of red ink. His credit utilization is at 98%, Malik pointed out. He has 5 credit cards, all maxed out. He is making minimum payments on 2 of them and has missed payments on the other 3. The Range Rover? It is a lease, and he is 2 months behind. He got a final notice letter last week. They are about to repo the car. And the house? I asked. They live in a massive house in South Park. Mortgage is in arrears, Malik said. He has not paid since September. He is currently in the pre-foreclosure grace period, another 30 days, and the bank puts a notice on the front door. He is broke, I whispered. He is completely, utterly broke. He is worse than broke, Malik corrected me. He is drowning. He is living on a mountain of debt that is about to collapse on his head. He has been using one credit card to pay off another, taking out cash advances to cover the minimums. It is a Ponzi scheme of one. The puzzle pieces slammed together in my mind. The tension at dinner, the way Grant had snapped about the $300 check, the desperation to control Henry's assets. It wasn't just greed, it was survival. The $500,000, I said. He didn't steal it to get rich. He stole it to stay afloat. He needs that money to pay off the mortgage arrears, save the car, and pay down the credit cards before Sienna finds out he is a fraud. Exactly, Malik said. $500,000 clears his debt and buys him maybe 6 more months of pretending to be a big shot. It is a lifeline. Malik clicked on another file. And here's the kicker. Remember that compliance violation at his old job? I did a little digging into the firm's internal memos. Don't ask me how. Rumor is, Grant authorized a series of high-risk trades on a client account without permission. He lost about $200,000 of someone else's money. He paid it back before anyone noticed, probably by borrowing from a loan shark or draining his own 401k. But the compliance officer caught the irregularity. They fired him, but they didn't prosecute because he made the account whole. He has done this before, I said. He plays with money that isn't his. And now he has graduated to family money, Malik said. Brooke, this guy is not just a thief. He is a narcissist who is terrified of being exposed. He has built this entire persona, the successful husband, the provider, the genius. If that falls apart, he has nothing. He is terrified that Sienna will leave him and your mother will cut him off. Malik leaned across the desk, his expression serious. You need to be careful, he said. A man who steals for greed is predictable. He will cut a deal to stay out of jail, but a man who steals to save his ego? A man who is terrified of humiliation? That is a dangerous animal. He is backed into a corner. If he thinks you are going to expose him, he will not just try to discredit you. He will try to destroy you. He already tried, I said. He threatened me at dinner. He told me to stop asking questions. He will do more than threaten, Malik warned. He is desperate. If he loses that $500,000, his house of cards falls down. He loses the car, the house, the wife, the reputation. He will fight you with everything he has. I looked at the screen again. I saw the dates, the numbers, the undeniable proof of a life built on lies. I thought about Sienna, walking into that mailbox store with her designer bag, thinking she was just helping her husband with some clever accounting. She had no idea she was the mule for a bankrupt man. He set Sienna up, I said, my voice hardening. He knew this was risky. That is why he made her sign everything. That is why the LLC is in my name. But the face on the camera is hers. If the police investigate, they find Sienna. Grant claims he knew nothing about it. He plays the shocked husband. He might even divorce her and claim she ruined him. That is the play, Malik agreed. He has insulated himself. He has no direct link to the crime, no signature, no face on camera, just the money eventually finding its way to him, probably through cash withdrawals or more shell companies. We have to link him to it, I said. We have to prove he is the architect. If I go to the police now with just the video, they arrest Sienna. Grant walks free, and he probably still finds a way to keep the money. I need to nail him. How? Malik asked. He is ghosting through the system. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray industrial street. I thought about the man who had sat at our table, mocking my $300 check while he was secretly suffocating under 6 figures of debt. We need to follow the money out of the LLC, I said. The $500,000 went into the Brooke Arts account on November 3rd. Has it moved? Malik typed furiously. I can't see the bank account directly without a warrant, but I can check for large transactions associated with that routing number if they hit the SWIFT system. Wait. He frowned. Here is a flag. A transfer request was initiated yesterday for the full amount. Where is it going? I asked. To an account in the Cayman Islands, Malik said. An entity called Blue Horizon Holdings. It is pending clearance. It should go through in 24 hours. He is moving it offshore, I said. He is getting ready to run, or at least hide the cash where American courts can't touch it. If that money leaves the country, you never see it again, Malik said. And Grant claims he was a victim of identity theft too. I need to stop him, I said. But I can't just stop the wire. I need him to admit it. I need him to show his hand. I turned back to Malik. A plan was forming in my mind. It was dangerous, and it relied on Grant's arrogance. But it was the only way to save Sienna from prison and put Grant behind bars. Malik, I said, can you get me the full details on that Cayman account? Who is the signatory? It is a shell, Malik said. But if I dig into the incorporation papers of the holding company, give me an hour. Get it, I said. And I need one more thing. I need you to find out who Grant owes the most money to, the one creditor he is most afraid of. Malik raised an eyebrow. Why? Because, I said, picking up my purse, I am going to realize that Grant isn't motivated by money. He is motivated by fear, and I am going to use that fear to make him make a mistake. Brooke, Malik said, standing up. Be careful. You are poking a tiger. No, I said, opening the door. I am poking a rat who is pretending to be a tiger, and I'm about to turn on the lights. I walked out into the cool air. I had the ammunition. Grant Hale was not a financial wizard. He was a fraud. And I was going to make sure that when his house of cards fell, he was the only one standing underneath it. The plan was simple. Or at least, I thought it was. I texted Sienna and asked to meet at a small, independent coffee shop in Noda, far away from the country club crowd. I played the part of the contrite sister perfectly in the message. I told her I was confused, that I was sorry for causing a scene at Thanksgiving, and that I just wanted to understand what was happening so I could explain it to Grandpa Henry. I arrived 15 minutes early. I chose a booth in the back corner, away from the espresso machine's hiss. I took my phone out and set it on the table, face down, but I had already started the voice memo app. The microphone was sensitive enough to pick up a whisper across the table. I also had a backup digital recorder taped to the underside of the table, just in case. I was terrified. My hands were trembling so badly I had to clasp them around my ceramic mug to keep them still. I was a music teacher, not a spy. But every time I felt the urge to run, I thought about Henry's face when he realized his own family had robbed him. I thought about the forgery. Sienna arrived 10 minutes late. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf that cost more than my rent. Looking over her shoulder as she entered, she spotted me and marched over, her heels clicking on the concrete floor like gunfire. She sat down without ordering anything. She did not take off her sunglasses. Make this fast, Brooke, she said. Grant is waiting for me. We have a meeting with our estate planner. I just wanted to talk, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. I have been thinking about what you said, about Grandpa getting confused. Sienna let out a sharp sigh. He is 77. Brooke, his mind isn't what it used to be. Grant and I are just trying to protect the assets. If we let him throw money at every little charity case that walks by, there won't be anything left for the family. So the wire transfer, I said, leaning in slightly. The $500,000, you moved it to protect him? We reallocated it, Sienna corrected me, waving her hand dismissively. It is a financial arrangement. Grant calls it liquidity management. We put it into a holding company so it would yield better returns than just sitting in a checking account. Henry signed the papers. You saw him. But he thought he was sending it to me, I said. He thought he was building the art center. Sienna scoffed. Oh, please. That art center is a pipe dream. You would have wasted that money on rent and instruments for kids who don't even care. Grant can turn that $500,000 into $2 million in a few years. We are doing Grandpa a favor. By forging my signature? I asked. The question hung in the air. Sienna stiffened. She lowered her sunglasses to glare at me. Nobody forged anything, she hissed. I signed as a proxy. It happens all the time in business. Look, Brooke, you need to grow up. This is how the real world works. Money goes where it is managed best. It does not go to music teachers with a savior complex. So you admit you signed my name, I said, my heart pounding against my ribs. You admit you opened the LLC. I admit that I helped my husband secure our future, Sienna said, her voice dripping with venom. And honestly, who is going to believe you? You are the bitter, poor sister driving a 10-year-old car. We have lawyers on retainer who cost more per hour than you make in a month. If you try to take this to court, we will bury you in paperwork until you are bankrupt. Is that a threat? I asked. It is a promise, Sienna said. She leaned back, a smug smile playing on her lips. Go home, Brooke. Stop playing detective. You are out of your league. I felt a surge of triumph. She had said it. She had admitted to the proxy signature and the intent to control the money. It was all on the recording. Thank you, Sienna, I said. That is all I needed to hear. I reached for my phone to stop the recording. Suddenly, a hand slammed down on the table, trapping my wrist. I gasped and looked up. Grant was standing there. I had not heard him approach. He must have come in through the back entrance or been sitting in a different booth the whole time. His face was a mask of cold fury. "I told you she was wearing a wire," Grant said to Sienna, not taking his eyes off me. "Grant," Sienna squeaked. "I handled it. She knows her place." "She knows nothing," Grant snarled. He snatched my phone from the table with his other hand. "Hey!" I shouted, trying to grab it back. "Give that back! That is my property!" Grant ignored me. He tapped the screen, saw the red waveform of the recording app still running, and smiled. It was a terrifying, dead smile. "Delete," he said, tapping the trash icon. Then he went into the recently deleted folder and wiped it permanently. "You can't do that!" I yelled, standing up. A few people in the coffee shop turned to look. But Grant did not care. He was desperate, and desperate men stop caring about social niceties. He dropped the phone into a pitcher of ice water sitting on the table. My phone sizzled and went black. "Oops," Grant said. "Clumsy me." He leaned in close, so close I could smell the expensive cologne masking the scent of his fear. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep painfully. "Listen to me, you little leech," he whispered, his voice a low rumble. "You think you can play games with me? You think a recording on an iPhone is going to take me down?" "I know you are broke, Grant," I spat back, adrenaline overriding my fear. "I know about the debts. I know about the termination from Sterling Capital." Grant's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, and his grip on my arm tightened until I winced. "If you say one word about my finances to anyone," he hissed, "I will destroy you. And I don't mean physically. I mean I will burn your little life to the ground. I have friends on the school board. I have friends in the city council. I will make you radioactive." He released my arm with a shove that sent me stumbling back into the booth. "Come on, Sienna," he commanded. Sienna looked at me, then at Grant. She looked frightened now, realizing that this was not just a family spat anymore. This was war. She grabbed her bag and scurried after him. I fished my dead phone out of the water pitcher. It was ruined. The backup recorder under the table was still there, but Grant's voice had been a whisper, and the ambient noise of the shop was loud. I checked it later. All I had was the sound of Sienna acting superior, which wasn't a crime, and the sound of a scuffle. The confession about the forgery was drowned out by the hiss of the milk steamer. I had lost. But Grant was not done. He had promised to destroy me, and unlike his financial promises, this was one he intended to keep. 3 days later, I was called to the principal's office. I walked into the administration building of Harding High School, feeling a heavy knot of dread in my stomach. Principal Vance was a good man, a man who had supported my arts program for years, but when I walked into his office, he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Sit down, Brooke," he said, gesturing to the chair. There was another woman in the room. I recognized her as the district's legal counsel. "What is going on?" I asked. "We received a formal complaint this morning," the lawyer said, sliding a folder across the desk. "It is an anonymous complaint, but given the severity of the allegations, we are required to investigate." I opened the folder. My hands shook as I read the words. Allegations of psychological instability, erratic behavior, attempted extortion of a family member, elder abuse regarding a grandfather with dementia. "This is a lie," I said, looking up. "This is completely fabricated. My brother-in-law wrote this. He is trying to intimidate me." "The complaint includes an affidavit stating that you harassed your sister and brother-in-law at a public establishment and attempted to coerce them into giving you money," the lawyer said. "There is also a mention of you manipulating your grandfather into signing checks he did not understand." "That is the opposite of what happened," I cried. "They stole from him. I am the one trying to help him." "Brooke," Principal Vance said gently, "the school board has a zero-tolerance policy regarding financial impropriety and abuse allegations. Until this is cleared up, we have to place you on administrative leave." "Suspended?" I whispered. "You are suspending me?" "With pay, for now," Vance said, "but you cannot be on campus. You cannot have contact with the students. My students have their winter showcase in 2 weeks, I said, tears stinging my eyes. They need me. I am sorry, Brooke, Vance said. Please hand over your badge and keys. I walked out of the school with a cardboard box of my personal belongings. I felt numb. Being a teacher wasn't just my job. It was who I was. It was the one thing I had built that was mine, and Grant had taken it away with a single letter. He had hit me where it hurt most. He had stripped me of my credibility. If I went to the police now, I wasn't just a concerned granddaughter. I was a suspended teacher accused of elder abuse. I drove home to my apartment. It was a modest place, but it was my sanctuary. When I walked in, I found my mother waiting for me. She had a key for emergencies, a privilege I immediately regretted granting her. The living room was a wreck. A vase of flowers I had bought myself lay shattered on the floor. Cushions were thrown off the sofa. Celeste stood in the middle of the chaos, her chest heaving. "How dare you!" she screamed the moment she saw me. "Mom?" I dropped my box. "What are you doing?" "Grant told me everything," she yelled. "He told me you tried to blackmail him and Sienna. He told me you harassed them in public. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? The Hales are prominent people. If word gets out that my daughter is a blackmailer, I will never be able to show my face at the club again." "He is lying! Mom!" I shouted back, stepping over the broken glass. "He stole Grandpa's money. He is broke. He is using you." "Shut up!" Celeste picked up a framed photo of me and Henry from the mantel and threw it. It smashed against the wall, glass raining down on the carpet. "I don't care about your conspiracy theories. I care about this family's name. You are jealous. Vindictive trash." She walked up to me, her face inches from mine. "You are going to apologize," she hissed. "You are going to write a letter to the school board saying you were having a mental breakdown. You are going to drop this insanity about the check. And you are going to beg Grant for forgiveness. If you don't, I will cut you out of the will. I will make sure you never see a dime from me or your father." I looked at my mother. I looked at the shattered glass on the floor. I looked at the woman who was more concerned with her country club membership than the fact that her father had been robbed of $500,000. Something inside me snapped, but it wasn't a loud snap. It was quiet. It was the sound of a heavy door closing and locking. The fear vanished. The sadness evaporated. All that was left was cold, hard clarity. "No," I said. Celeste blinked. "What did you say to me?" "I said no," I repeated. My voice was calm. "I will not apologize. I will not write a letter, and I certainly won't beg a thief for forgiveness." "You ungrateful little—" Celeste raised her hand to slap me. I caught her wrist. I didn't squeeze hard, just enough to stop her. She looked at me in shock. I had never fought back before. I had always been the one who took the hits to keep the peace. "Get out," I said. "This is my apartment," she screeched. "I co-signed the lease." "Then I will move," I said, releasing her arm. "But right now, you are leaving, and if you break one more thing, I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing, and think about how that will look at the club." Celeste stared at me. She saw something in my eyes she had never seen before. She saw the end of her control. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I stood alone in the silence of my wrecked apartment. I had lost my job. I had lost my family. I had lost my safety. Grant thought he had won. He thought he had stripped me of everything that gave me power. But he was wrong. He had stripped me of everything that made me hesitate. I picked up the broken photo of Henry and me. I brushed the glass off his smiling face. "Okay," I whispered. "No more playing nice. No more recording conversations." I went to my desk and opened my laptop. I pulled up the file Malik had sent me. The file with the offshore accounts. The file with the debt records. Grant wanted a war? He wanted to play dirty? I wasn't a teacher anymore. I was a woman with nothing left to lose, and that made me the most dangerous person in his world. I picked up the phone and dialed Malik. "Malik," I said when he answered. "The bait failed. He didn't take it. He burned the boat." "Are you okay?"
Malik asked. I heard about the school.
I am fine, I said. Malik, you asked me if I wanted to find the money or destroy the man.
I did.
I changed my mind, I said. I want to do both, and I know exactly when to do it.
When?
The Winter Solstice Gala, I said. Next week. It is the biggest social event of the season. My mother is on the committee. Grant is being honored as a young philanthropist. They will all be there. Brooke, that is a public event, Malik warned. If you go in there, there is no coming back. Good, I said. I don't want to come back. I want to burn it down. The glow of Malik's computer monitors was the only light in the room, casting long, sharp shadows across the maps and bank logs scattered on his desk. It had been 24 hours since my mother had thrown me out of her apartment. 24 hours since I had decided to stop being the victim. It is gone, Brooke, Malik said, his voice flat. He tapped a key, and a complex diagram appeared on the screen, a web of lines connecting one bank account to another. The $500,000, it did not stay in the Brooke Arts LLC account for more than an hour. I leaned in, studying the trail of my stolen future. Where is it? It bounced, Malik explained, tracing the line with his finger. From the LLC here in Charlotte, it went to a holding company in Delaware. Standard procedure to strip away identifying information. From there, it was wired internationally.
To where? I asked.
The Cayman Islands, Malik said. An account held by a shell corporation called Blue Horizon Holdings. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Cayman Islands. That means it is untouchable, right? Unless we have a federal indictment? It is hard to touch, Malik agreed. But here's the interesting part. I pulled the incorporation documents for Blue Horizon. It is a single-member entity. Sienna, I guessed. She signed everything else. Malik shook his head. No, Sienna is not on the paperwork. Her name is nowhere near Blue Horizon. The sole signatory, the only person with the digital key to access those funds, is Grant Hale. I stared at the screen. The betrayal was so complete it was almost impressive. He cut her out, I whispered. He made Sienna commit the fraud here in the States. He made her walk into the bank, made her face the cameras, made her sign the papers, but the moment the money turned real, he moved it to a place where she cannot reach it. She is the fall guy, Malik said. If the police investigate, they find the LLC in Charlotte, they find Sienna's signature, they arrest her. Meanwhile, Grant sits in the Caymans with $500,000, claiming he had no idea his wife was an embezzler. He hates her. I realized. You don't do that to someone you love. You don't even do that to a business partner. You do that to a disposable asset. It gets worse, Malik said. He looked hesitant, which was rare for him. He picked up a piece of paper from his printer tray. I ran a travel search. I wanted to see if Grant was planning any trips to visit his new bank account. And? He booked a flight, Malik said. One way, Charlotte to Zurich, with a layover in London. It departs the morning after the Winter Solstice Gala. One way, I repeated. He is running. He is going to cash out and vanish. He is not going alone, Malik added softly, but he is not taking Sienna. He slid the paper across the desk. It was a printout of a flight manifest. I saw Grant's name in seat 4A, and in seat 4B, right next to him, was a name I did not recognize. Elena Ricci. Who is Elena Ricci? I asked. She was an intern at his old firm, Malik said. The one he was fired from. I did a deep dive on his phone records. They have been texting nonstop for 3 months. She is 23 years old. I felt sick, not for myself, but for the sheer magnitude of the lie. Sienna was at home right now, probably picking out a dress for the gala, thinking she and Grant were a power couple fighting off her jealous sister. She had destroyed her relationship with me, betrayed our grandfather, and risked prison, all for a man who had already bought a ticket to a new life with a 23-year-old girl. He leaves in 4 days, I said. He takes the $500,000, leaves Sienna to face the music, and disappears into Europe. "We have to go to the police," Malik said. "We have the flight info. We have the money trail. It is enough for probable cause." "No," I said, pacing the small office. "If we go to the police now, they bring him in for questioning. He will lawyer up. He will claim the flight is a business trip. He will claim the money in the Caymans is a legitimate investment. He might get out on bail, and then he will disappear for real. Or worse, he will realize we know, and he will accelerate his timeline." "So what do you want to do?" "I need to talk to Henry," I said. "There is something missing. $500,000 is a lot of money, but is it enough to live on forever in Zurich? Grant is greedy. He is arrogant. I don't think he is done." I left Malik's office and drove to my grandfather's estate. I had to park a block away and hike through the woods to the back entrance to avoid my mother's car, which was parked in the driveway. She was practically living there now, guarding Henry like a prison warden. I found Henry in the solarium. He was sitting in his armchair, staring out at the gray winter garden. He looked frailer than he had a few days ago. The stress was eating him alive. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, but he put a finger to his lips. "They are in the kitchen," he whispered, "discussing the menu for the gala." "Grandpa," I whispered back, kneeling beside his chair. "We found the money. Grant moved it to the Caymans, and he is leaving the country in 4 days, without Sienna." Henry's hands shook as he gripped the armrests. "He is leaving her?" "He is setting her up to take the blame," I said. "But that is not why I am here. $500,000 isn't enough for a man like Grant. He has debts. He has a lifestyle to maintain. Is there anything else? Has he asked you to sign anything else?" Henry's face went pale. He reached into the pocket of his cardigan and pulled out a folded document. "He gave me this yesterday," Henry said. "He told me it was a tax protection form. He said that with the confusion over the wire transfer, the IRS might audit me. He said this document would shield the estate from taxes and keep the government out of my accounts." I took the document and unfolded it. I scanned the legal jargon. It was dense, filled with clauses about fiduciary duty and asset management, but the title at the top was clear enough if you knew what to look for. Durable power of attorney with full asset control and medical guardianship. I felt the blood drain from my face. "This isn't a tax form, Grandpa," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "This gives him everything. If you sign this, Grant gets control of every bank account, every property, every stock. He can sell the house. He can liquidate your portfolio. And this part here?" I pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. "This gives him the right to make medical decisions for you if you are deemed incapacitated." Henry looked at me, horror dawning in his eyes. "Incapacitated?" "He has spent the last week telling everyone you are senile," I said. "He has the doctor on standby. If you sign this, he can declare you unfit the next day. He can put you in a home, Grandpa. He can lock you away in a facility, drug you so you can't speak, and legally drain every cent you have while he lives in Europe." "He wants to bury me," Henry whispered. "He does not just want my money. He wants my life. He needs you to sign this before he gets on that plane." I realized. That is the plan. He gets the $500,000 as a starter fund. Then he gets you to sign this. He flies to Zurich. From there, he uses this power of attorney to liquidate the rest of the estate remotely. He transfers the millions to his offshore accounts, and by the time anyone notices, you are in a nursing home, and he is gone. "I won't sign it," Henry said, crumpling the paper. "No," I said, grabbing his hand. "Don't tear it up. We need him to think you are going to sign it." Henry looked at me, confused. "What?" "If you refuse, he will panic," I explained. "He might forge your signature again, or he might do something desperate and violent before he leaves. We need him to feel safe. We need him to think he has won." I looked at the document, then at the garden outside. The winter solstice gala was tomorrow night. It was going to be a room full of the city's elite, judges, lawyers, bankers, the very people Grant was trying to impress. "The gala," I said. "Is he expecting you to sign it there?" He said we could do it quietly in the study before the guests arrive. Henry said, he said it would be a load off my mind so I could enjoy the party. We are going to give him exactly what he wants, I said, a cold plan forming in my mind. We are going to play his game, Grandpa. I need you to act. I need you to be exactly who they say you are. I need you to be confused. I need you to be weak. I need you to make Grant believe that you are ready to hand over your life to him. You want me to play the fool? Henry asked, his pride bristling. I want you to play the bait, I said. We have to lure him out into the open. We can't catch him in the study. We need him to do something undeniable in front of witnesses. And the money? Henry asked. The $500,000? Let it go, I said. Henry stared at me. Brooke, that is $500,000. It is the cost of doing business, I said hard. If we chase that money now, we lose the chance to stop him from taking the other $50 million. We sacrifice the pawn to take the king. Let him think he got away with the wire transfer. Let him feel arrogant. Arrogance makes people sloppy. I squeezed his hand. Can you do it? Can you pretend to be losing your mind for one more day? Can you let Celeste and Grant treat you like a child in front of all your friends? Henry straightened his back. The frailty vanished, replaced by the steel that had built an empire. I built this family from dirt, Henry said. I can pretend to be dirt for one night if it means I get to bury a snake. Good, I said. Here's the plan. Tomorrow night, at the gala, you are going to refuse to go into the study. You are going to insist on being in the ballroom. You are going to act confused, like you don't know where you are. Make Grant nervous. Make him feel like his timeline is slipping. And then? And then, I said, I am going to crash the party. Celeste will have security throw you out, Henry warned. Let her try, I said. I am bringing my own security, and I am bringing the truth. I stood up. I had to leave before my mother found me. One more thing, Grandpa, I said at the door. When the moment comes, when I walk through those doors, don't look at me. Look at Grant. I want you to see his face when he realizes his life is over. I slipped out into the cold afternoon air. The rain had started again, turning the world gray and blurry. I walked back to my car, my mind racing. I had the evidence of the debts. I had the flight manifest. I had the video of Sienna. I had the fraudulent wire transfer. And now, I knew about the power of attorney. Grant Hale had constructed a perfect trap for my grandfather. He had built it out of legal papers and family loyalty. He thought he was the hunter. He didn't know that the prey had just handed the rifle to me. I pulled out my phone, a cheap burner I had bought after Grant destroyed my real one. I dialed Paige Moreno, my old friend who was now a prosecutor. Paige, I said when she answered, I need a favor, a big one. Brooke? She sounded surprised. I heard you got suspended. Are you okay? I am about to be suspended from a lot more than just school, I said. I am planning to disrupt a private event, trespassing on private property, and potentially causing a riot among the upper crust of Charlotte. Okay, Paige said slowly. And why are you telling a prosecutor this? Because I need you to be there, I said. I don't need you to arrest me. I need you to witness a confession, and I need you to bring a couple of officers who aren't on my mother's payroll. Brooke, if you are wrong about this, I am not wrong, I said. Grant Hale is fleeing the country on Tuesday. Tomorrow night is the only chance we have to stop him. If you don't help me, a 77-year-old man loses everything. There was a long silence on the line. Then Paige sighed. What time is the party? 7 o'clock, I said. Wear something nice. It is going to be a show. I hung up and threw the phone onto the passenger seat. The stage was set. The script was written. Grant thought he was the director, orchestrating a tragedy where Henry died alone and broke, and I died a social pariah. He was about to find out that this wasn't a tragedy. It was a thriller. And in the last act, the villains don't get to fly to Zurich. They get to burn. Paige Moreno did not look like the kind of person who spent her days putting rich men in prison. She was petite, with curly dark hair pulled back into a messy bun, and a coffee stain on her silk blouse. But when she sat behind her desk at the district attorney's office, surrounded by stacks of case files that smelled like dust and misery, she transformed. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, and utterly devoid of patience for nonsense. I had known Paige since our freshman year at UNC, where we had bonded over cheap ramen and a shared hatred of 8 o'clock a.m. statistics classes. Now, she was the assistant district attorney specializing in financial crimes, earning a reputation as a shark who could smell blood in a spreadsheet from a mile away. I sat in the hard plastic chair across from her, watching as she flipped through the dossier Malik and I had assembled. The room was quiet, except for the aggressive rustle of paper. Identity theft, Paige muttered, turning a page. Wire fraud, elder abuse, money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud. She looked up at me over the rim of her reading glasses. You have been busy, Brooke. Is it enough? I asked, my hands gripping the edge of her desk. Is it enough to arrest him before he gets on that plane to Zurich on Tuesday? Paige leaned back, tapping a pen against her chin. She did not give me the answer I wanted. It is enough to arrest Sienna, she said bluntly. My heart sank. Sienna is the mule. Grant is the one pulling the strings. I know that, and you know that, Paige said, gesturing to the file. But look at the paper trail. Brooke, Sienna walked into the bank. Sienna signed the wire authorization as a proxy. Sienna walked into the mailbox store. Sienna signed for the packages. Grant's name is on nothing domestic. The only place his name appears is on the offshore account in the Caymans, and even that is shielded by layers of corporate privacy laws that will take me 6 months to subpoena. So he walks? I asked, feeling the panic rising in my chest. He steals $500,000, destroys my grandfather, and just walks away? If we arrest them today, Paige said, her voice dropping to a serious, instructive tone, Grant will claim he had no idea what his wife was doing. He will say Sienna set up the LLC to hide a shopping addiction or gambling debts. He will throw her to the wolves, divorce her, and fly to Europe with his clean record. And you? You will be dragged into it because the LLC is in your name. The defense will argue you were a co-conspirator who got cold feet. I have an alibi for the signing, I argued. Alibis get muddy in court, Paige countered. We need a kill shot. We need something that links Grant Hale directly to the crime, in real time, with intent. She stood up and walked to the whiteboard on her wall, uncapping a red marker. Right now, this is a he said, she said case involving family drama. Paige said, juries hate those. They think it is just a civil dispute dressed up as a crime. To get a judge to sign an emergency warrant that stops him at the airport, I need a confession, or I need him to commit an overt act of fraud in front of witnesses who are not related to him. He is trying to get my grandfather to sign a durable power of attorney, I said. He wants full control of the estate. Paige stopped writing. She turned slowly. When? Tomorrow night, I said. At the winter solstice gala. He wants to do it quietly in the study before the party starts. Paige's lips curved into a predatory smile. That is it. That is the overt act. If he knowingly coerces a man he claims is incapacitated into signing over $50 million, that is fraud in the inducement. And if he does it while knowing he has already stolen $500,000, it establishes a pattern of predation. But he wants to do it in private, I said. It will be his word against Henry's. Then we don't let him do it in private, Paige said. We make him do it in public, and we make sure that when he reaches for the pen, we hit him with the truth so hard he can't breathe. She sat back down and pulled a fresh legal pad toward her. Here is how this works, she said, her voice crisp and commanding. We are going to conduct a sting operation, but since I can't officially sanction a police wire without more probable cause, we are going to rely on the citizen's right to record in a one-party consent state, and the fact that a gala is a semi-public event. She looked at me intensely. You need to understand the rules of evidence. Brooke, if you just scream at him, it is hearsay. If you show a video that hasn't been verified, his lawyer will claim it is a deep fake. We need a chain of custody. Malik can handle the tech, I said. He is a licensed PI. Good, Paige said. I need Malik to timestamp and hash lock every digital file you have. The video of Sienna at the mailbox, the bank logs, the flight manifest. They need to be unalterable. And tomorrow night, you are not just crashing a party. You are presenting a closing argument. I am going to put it on the big screen, I said. The gala always has a slideshow of the family's charity work. I am going to swap the file. Paige nodded approvingly. Public humiliation is not a legal strategy, but it forces a reaction. When a narcissist is cornered in public, they don't cry, they attack. And when Grant attacks, he will slip up. He will say something to justify himself. He will assert ownership of the money. And that is when I step in. You will be there? I will be a guest, Paige said. I will have 2 plainclothes officers with me, waiting in the hallway, but I cannot move until he incriminates himself. You have to push him off the ledge. Brooke, you have to make him believe he has already won, so he brags about it, or make him so angry he admits it.
I can do that, I said.
One more thing, Paige warned, her expression softening slightly. For this to work, Grant has to believe you are out of the game. He needs to think you are broken. If he suspects you are plotting, he won't bring the power of attorney papers. He will spook and run early. He thinks I am broken, I said. He got me suspended from my job. My mother disowned me. He thinks I am cowering in my apartment. Keep him thinking that, Paige said. Don't leave your house until the party. Don't call anyone. Let him think he has crushed you. I left Paige's office with a list of instructions and a feeling I had not experienced in weeks. Hope. I drove straight to Malik's office. The atmosphere there was different now. It wasn't just investigation. It was production. We need a timeline, I told Malik, throwing my coat on the chair. Paige says we need to build a narrative that a jury can understand in 30 seconds. Visuals, hard data, no speculation. Malik cracked his knuckles and pulled his keyboard closer. I can rip the metadata from the bank PDFs to prove they were created by Grant's computer if he was sloppy enough to use his home Wi-Fi. Let me check. He typed for a moment, then grinned. Got him? The metadata on the forged wire request? The author tag is Grant Hale, MacBook Pro. He didn't scrub the file properties before he printed it for Henry to sign. That connects him, I said, feeling a surge of adrenaline. That puts him at the keyboard. It is circumstantial, but it is strong, Malik said. Okay, here is the flow for the presentation. Slide 1, the lie. We show the $300 check and the $500,000 withdrawal side by side. Slide 2, the thief, the video of Sienna with the bag. Slide 3, the mastermind, the Blue Horizon account, and the flight to Zurich. And the finale, I added, the power of attorney document he is trying to get Henry to sign. We need to show the text that allows him to institutionalize Grandpa. I will highlight that paragraph in red, Malik said. Make it bleed on the screen. We worked for 6 hours. We synced the audio from my confrontation with Sienna, the parts that were audible, with the security footage. We built a digital indictment that was undeniable. When we were done, Malik handed me a small, encrypted USB drive. This is it, he said. Do not lose it. And Brooke, I did a little recon on the venue. The country club uses a wireless projection system. I have cloned the access key. You don't need to physically plug into their laptop. As long as you are within 50 feet of the control booth with a laptop of your own, we can override their signal. You are a genius, I said. I am just a guy who hates bullies, Malik said. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is game day. I went home, but I did not sleep. I spent the next day pacing my apartment, staring at the phone, willing myself not to call Henry. I had to trust that he could play his part. I sent one text to my mother, calculated to look pathetic. Mom, I'm sorry about the vase. I'm just so tired. I won't bother you at the gala. I hope you all have a good night. She did not reply. Perfect. She would tell Grant. Grant would read it and laugh. He would relax. He would put on his tuxedo, check his offshore balance, and think that the annoyance of Brooke Allen had finally been extinguished. At 6 in the evening, I showered and dressed. I did not put on a ball gown. I put on a sharp black suit, pants, and a tailored blazer. I looked like I was going to a funeral or a court hearing. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were dark, rimmed with sleeplessness, but they were steady. "Showtime," I whispered. I drove to the country club. The parking lot was filled with Bentleys and Porsches. I parked my sedan in the back, near the service entrance. Malik was already there, sitting in his van, monitoring the security frequencies. "I am in position," Malik texted. "System is vulnerable, waiting for your signal." I walked to the side door. I knew the caterers would be busy loading in trays of hors d'oeuvres. I slipped in behind a waiter carrying a tower of champagne glasses, keeping my head down. I made my way to the shadows behind the heavy velvet curtains of the ballroom. The room was already filling up. The chandeliers were blazing. A string quartet was playing Mozart. I saw them. Celeste was holding court near the center of the room, wearing emerald green silk, laughing too loudly. Sienna was beside her, looking nervous, clutching her crystal-studded clutch. Not the Gucci bag, thank God. And there was Grant. He looked every inch the golden boy. He was wearing a midnight blue tuxedo. He was shaking hands, clapping men on the back, flashing that white, manufactured smile. He looked relaxed. He looked victorious. Then I saw Henry. My heart broke a little. He was sitting in a wheelchair, a prop we had decided on to sell the frailty narrative. He was slumped over, a blanket over his legs, looking confused and small. Grant leaned down and whispered something to Henry. Henry nodded vaguely, his head bobbing like a puppet. Grant patted his shoulder with a condescending affection that made my stomach turn. I checked my watch. 7:30, the speeches were scheduled for 8. Grant began to wheel Henry toward the library doors. This was it. He was taking him to sign the papers privately. But Henry stopped. He locked the wheels of the chair. I saw Grant try to push, but the chair wouldn't move. Henry said something loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "No!" Henry's voice wavered, sounding frightened. "I want to stay for the music. You said there would be music." "Henry, we just need to sign those tax forms," Grant said through a tight smile, trying to unlock the wheels. "It will only take a minute." "No!" Henry shouted, causing a few heads to turn. "I don't want to go to the dark room. I want to be here with my friends." Celeste rushed over, her smile straining. "Daddy, please, don't make a scene." "Let him stay," a judge standing nearby said jovially. "The man wants a drink and a song. Grant, let him have it. Business can wait." Grant hesitated. He looked around. He saw the eyes of the city's elite on him. He couldn't force the old man without looking aggressive. "Of course," Grant said, releasing the chair. He looked ready to kill someone, but he masked it instantly. "We can do it later. Enjoy the music. Henry." He had taken the bait. He was stuck in the room. I took a deep breath. I pulled my laptop out of my oversized tote bag and opened it on a small service table behind the curtain. I connected to the network Malik had hacked. "I am connected," I texted Malik. "Green light," Malik replied. "Override in 3, 2, 1. On the stage, the projector screen was currently showing a loop of photos. Sienna on a ski trip. Celeste at a charity luncheon. I hit enter. The music didn't stop, but the screen flickered. The smiling photos vanished. In their place, a single, stark image appeared. It was a scan of a check. Paid to the order of Henry Caldwell. Amount, $300. And right next to it, larger and more damning, wire transfer, $500,000. Beneficiary, Brook Arts, LLC. A ripple of confusion went through the room. People stopped talking. They pointed at the screen. "What is that?" someone asked. Grant turned around. I saw the blood drain from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. I stepped out from behind the curtain. I didn't have a microphone, but the room had gone so quiet, I didn't need one. "Good evening, everyone," I said. Celeste dropped her champagne glass. It shattered, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Brooke," she gasped, "what are you doing here?" "I am here to correct a mistake," I said, walking steadily toward the center of the room. I kept my eyes locked on Grant. "We are all here to celebrate the Hale family's generosity, aren't we? Grant, you are receiving the Philanthropist Award tonight." "Security!" Grant yelled, his voice cracking. "Get her out of here. She is mentally unstable." "I am perfectly sane, Grant," I said, "and I think you should let me finish, unless you want everyone to wonder why you are so afraid of a few bank records." I tapped a key on my remote clicker. The slide changed. The video of Sienna played, the woman in the scarf, the Gucci bag, the signature. "That is my sister," I said, "picking up mail for a shell company that does not exist. A company used to launder $500,000 stolen from our grandfather." "Liar!" Sienna screamed. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the floor, trembling. "And where did the money go?" I asked. I clicked again. The flight manifest appeared. Grant Hale, Elena Ricci, Charlotte to Zurich, one way. The room gasped. A collective, shocked intake of breath from 200 of Charlotte's wealthiest citizens. "You aren't a philanthropist, Grant," I said, stopping 10 feet from him. "You are a thief. You are bankrupt. You are drowning in debt. And you stole from a 77-year-old man to buy yourself a ticket out of the country with your mistress." Grant looked around. He saw the faces of his peers turning from confusion to disgust. He saw his reputation incinerating in real time. And just as Paige had predicted, he didn't cry. He attacked. He marched toward me, his face twisted into a snarl. "You think you can humiliate me?" he shouted, pointing a finger in my face. "You have nothing. That money was given to me. Henry signed it over. It is my money to manage however I see fit." "There it is," I heard a voice say from the hallway. Paige Moreno stepped into the ballroom. She was wearing a red evening gown, but the badge clipped to her belt was very official. Behind her were 2 police officers. "Grant Hale," Paige said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Thank you for that clarification. Asserting ownership of stolen funds is a confession to wire fraud." Grant froze. He looked at Paige. He looked at me. He looked at Henry, who was slowly unlocking the wheels of his chair. Henry stood up. He didn't need the cane. He kicked the blanket away. "I never gave you a dime, Grant," Henry said, his voice strong and clear. "And I am not signing your papers." Grant realized, in that split second, that the walls hadn't just closed in, they had crushed him. But he was a cornered animal, and he made one last stupid mistake. He lunged for me. The winter solstice gala was not just a party, it was a coronation. My mother, Celeste, had transformed the ballroom of her estate into a winter wonderland of white roses, crystal ice sculptures, and ambition. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the low hum of networking. Every person who mattered in Charlotte was there. The city council members, the partners from the top law firms, the bishop of the diocese, and the bankers who held the debt of half the people in the room. They were there to worship at the altar of the Allen family's success, unaware that the temple was built on a foundation of rot. I stood in the shadows of the mezzanine, looking down at the stage my mother had set. It was perfect, and down there, in the center of the spotlight, walked Grant Hale. He moved through the crowd like a king, his tuxedo tailored to perfection, one hand resting possessively on the back of my grandfather's wheelchair. He was playing the role of the devoted grandson-in-law with an intensity that made my skin crawl. He nodded solemnly to the bishop, laughed charmingly at a judge's joke, and checked his watch every 30 seconds. Beside him, Sienna was glowing. She wore a silver gown that clung to her like a second skin, her neck dripping in diamonds that I now knew were likely rented or bought on a credit card that was months overdue. She looked around the room with a smug satisfaction, believing she had won the war. She had the money, she had the status, and she had banished her annoying sister. But the real star of the show was Henry. My grandfather sat in the wheelchair, a plaid blanket tucked over his knees, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. He was putting on the performance of a lifetime. "Is it time for pudding?" Henry asked loudly, his voice cracking just enough to sound pathetic. "I was promised pudding." "Soon, Henry, soon," Grant said, his voice dripping with fake patience loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "We just need to go into the study for a moment first. Remember? We have to sign those papers so the nice men from the government don't take your house." "The house?" Henry blinked, looking around wildly. "I don't want to lose the house. Who are you again?" A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. I saw the judge shake his head sadly. They were buying it. They saw a senile old man losing his grip, and a heroic young man stepping in to save him. "I am Grant, Henry," Grant said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was getting impatient. I could see the tension in his shoulders. He needed that signature before the night was over. "I am family. Come on, let's go sign." "I can't find my glasses," Henry whined, clutching the armrests. "I can't sign without my glasses. Did Celeste take them?" "I have them right here," Grant said, reaching into his pocket. He was practically vibrating with greed. He leaned down, whispering something urgent into Henry's ear. That was the signal. Grant thought he was seconds away from total control. He thought the finish line was right there. I walked over to the audio-visual booth, tucked in the corner of the mezzanine. The technician, a young guy hired for the night, looked up in surprise. "I am taking over the tribute presentation," I said, my voice calm. I didn't wait for his permission. I plugged my laptop into the main HDMI feed. "Hey, you can't," he started. "Trust me," I said, hitting the override key Malik had coded for me. "You are going to want to watch this." Below us, the lights dimmed. The string quartet faded out. The crowd hushed, expecting a montage of the Allen family's charitable contributions. Celeste beamed from the front row, raising her champagne glass. Instead of a photo of Celeste at a soup kitchen, the massive projection screen above the stage turned a stark, blinding white. Then, a video file began to play. It was grainy, black and white security footage, but on the 20-foot screen, it was impossible to miss the details. The timestamp read, 10 in the morning, 3 days ago. A woman walked into a frame. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf, looking over her shoulder like a criminal in a bad movie. She slammed a key onto a counter. The room remained silent for a heartbeat, confused. Then, the woman on the screen lifted her handbag onto the counter. It was a dark blue velvet bag with a distinct gold snake clasp. A gasp went through the room. It started in the front row and rippled back like a wave. Everyone in that room knew fashion, and they certainly knew Sienna's bag. She had been showing it off to the mayor's wife not 10 minutes ago. On the screen, the woman signed a digital pad. The camera zoomed in, the image sharpened by Malik's software. The signature was clear. Brooke Allen. "What is this?" Celeste hissed, her voice cutting through the silence. She looked from the screen to me, standing high above them on the mezzanine. I leaned into the microphone I had commandeered. "That is my sister," I said, my voice booming through the ballroom speakers. "Sienna Hale. She is picking up bank statements for a shell company called Brooke Arts LLC, a company she opened using my name, my identity, and my credit history." Sienna froze. Her face went the color of ash. She looked at the screen, then at her bag sitting on the table next to her, then at Grant. "Turn it off!" Grant roared, stepping away from Henry. "This is a violation of privacy. Security!" "I am not done, Grant," I said. I hit the next key. The screen changed. A complex flowchart appeared. Simple enough for a child to understand, but detailed enough for a prosecutor. On the left, Henry Caldwell's personal account. In the middle, Brooke Arts LLC. On the right, Blue Horizon Holdings, Cayman Islands. A red line connected them, pulsing with a number that made the wealthy guests gasp. $500,000. "This is the path of the money," I explained, narrating the crime in real time. "My grandfather thought he was donating to a community arts center. Instead, his money was wired to a fake company controlled by Sienna, and then immediately transferred offshore to an account in the Caribbean. "Liar!" Sienna screamed. Her voice was shrill, bordering on hysterical. "It was an investment! Grant said it was an investment."
An investment? I asked. Let's see who the beneficiary is.
I clicked again. The incorporation papers for Blue Horizon Holdings appeared. Sole owner and signatory, Grant Hale. The room erupted. The polite veneer of the upper class shattered instantly. The bankers were whispering furiously to one another. The judge looked thunderous. Grant looked like he had been punched in the gut. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. His carefully constructed mask of the benevolent, successful financier was cracking, falling away to reveal the desperate thief underneath. "He stole from me," Henry said. It wasn't the voice of a senile old man. Henry stood up from his wheelchair. He kicked the blanket away and stood tall, his spine straight, his eyes clear and furious. "He told you I was sick," Henry announced to the room, his voice carrying without a microphone. "He told you I was confused, but the only thing I was confused about was how a man with no job and no money could afford a Range Rover." "No job?" someone whispered near the front. "That brings me to my next slide," I said. I hit the button. This was the one that would hurt the most. This was the one that stripped away their dignity. The screen filled with a credit report. It was a sea of red. Sterling Capital. Employment terminated for cause. Mortgage status. Pre-foreclosure. Credit card debt. $142,000. Vehicle lease. Default. "The Hales aren't rich," I said, my voice cold. "They are destitute. Grant hasn't had a job in 4 months. He is living on credit cards and lies. He stole that $500,000 not to invest, but to pay off the debts he racked up pretending to be one of you." The humiliation in the room was palpable. For people like Celeste and Grant, being called a criminal was bad, but being exposed as poor was a death sentence. Sienna made a sound like a wounded animal. She looked around the room, seeing the pity and disgust on the faces of her friends. She couldn't handle it. She ran toward the stage. "Stop looking at it!" she screamed, flailing her arms. She climbed onto the small stage and stood in front of the screen, trying to block the projection with her body. She spread her arms wide, her silver dress shimmering, trying to cover the red ink of her husband's failures. But the screen was 20 feet wide. She looked tiny and pathetic, a speck of glitter against a mountain of evidence. The numbers shone right over her face, branding her. "It isn't true," Sienna sobbed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "We are successful. We are important. Grant, tell them. Tell them we are rich." Grant didn't move. He was staring at me. His eyes were dead. He knew the money was gone. He knew the reputation was gone.
"You ruined everything," Grant whispered, but in the silence of the room, it sounded like a shout.
"I have one more slide, Grant," I said. "The one that explains why you were in such a hurry to get Henry to sign that power of attorney tonight." "Don't," Grant said. For the first time, he sounded begging. I clicked the button. The final image appeared. It was a flight itinerary. Passenger 1, Grant Hale. Passenger 2, Elena Ricci. Destination, Zurich, Switzerland. Date, Tuesday, December 23rd. Type, one-way. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb having just detonated, the split second before the shockwave hits. Sienna stopped crying. She stopped waving her arms. She stood very still against the white screen, the light casting her shadow long across the floor. She slowly turned her head to look at the screen behind her. She read the name, Elena Ricci. Then she turned back to look at Grant. The look on her face wasn't anger, it was total, shattering comprehension. "Elena?" Sienna whispered. "The intern? The one you said was just coffee?" Grant didn't answer. He couldn't. "You were leaving." Sienna's voice rose, trembling with a mix of horror and rage. You made me sign those papers. You made me walk into that bank. You made me commit a felony. And you were going to leave me here to go to prison while you ran away with her? Sienna, listen to me, Grant started, taking a step forward, his hands raised. It is not what it looks like. It is a business trip. A one-way business trip? Henry boomed from the floor. With a 23-year-old girl and my money? Sienna let out a scream that didn't sound human. It was the sound of a woman whose entire reality had just dissolved. You used me, she shrieked. She jumped off the stage, stumbling in her heels, and ran at him. She didn't look like the perfect socialite anymore. She looked like an avenging fury. I lied for you. I stole for you. I destroyed my relationship with my sister for you. She began to hit him, pounding her fists against his chest, scratching at his face. Grant tried to push her away, but the crowd had formed a circle, trapping them in the center of their own disgrace. You are nothing, Sienna screamed, clawing at his tuxedo. You are broke. You are a liar. You are a cheat. Celeste stood frozen, her mouth agape, her perfect gala, her perfect image, her perfect son-in-law. All of it was ash. She looked up at me, high on the balcony. I looked down at her. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stared. You wanted a show. Mother, I thought, you wanted everyone to look at us. Well, they are looking. Grant finally shoved Sienna hard enough that she fell onto the polished floor. He straightened his jacket, trying to regain some shred of dignity, but his eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit. This is slander, Grant announced, his voice shaking. I will sue everyone in this room. This is a setup. It is not a setup, Grant, I said into the microphone. It is an indictment. I nodded toward the main doors. The heavy oak doors swung open. Paige Moreno walked in, her red dress blazing like a warning flag. Flanking her were two uniformed police officers and a man in a suit holding a very thick folder. Grant Hale, Paige said, her voice clear and authoritative. Please do not move. You are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The crowd parted for the police like the Red Sea. Grant looked at the officers. He looked at the exit. For a second, I thought he was going to run. He looked wild enough to try it. But then he looked at Henry. My grandfather was standing tall, looking at Grant with nothing but contempt. You thought I was weak, Henry said softly, but in the pin-drop silence, everyone heard it. You forgot that I made my money by reading people, and I read you the moment you walked into my house. The handcuffs clicked. The sound was louder than the applause Grant had been expecting. As the officers spun him around, Grant looked up at the mezzanine one last time. He locked eyes with me. There was no threat left in his face, no arrogance, just the terrifying realization that the extra child, the teacher with the savior complex, had just ended his life. I closed my laptop. The screen went black, plunging the room back into the soft, romantic lighting of the gala. But the party was over. The cleanup was just beginning. The handcuffs clicked shut around Grant's wrists, the sound sharp and final against the stunned silence of the ballroom. Two officers gripped his arms, pulling him back from where he had lunged toward the mezzanine. He wasn't fighting physically anymore, but his eyes were darting around the room, manic and desperate, searching for a loophole, a lifeline, anything to pull him out of the grave he had dug for himself. You are making a mistake, Grant shouted, his voice cracking. He twisted his neck to look at the crowd, at the judge, at the bishop, at anyone who might still believe the lie. Look at the documents. The LLC is in her name. Brooke Allen. She is the one who opened the account. She is the one who stole the money. I am just a victim of identity theft. He was trying to flip the script one last time. It was the desperate thrashing of a drowning man trying to climb on top of someone else to breathe. She set me up, Grant screamed, pointing a cuffed hand toward me. She is the one who hates this family. She did this to frame me because she is jealous of Sienna. For a second, just a second, I saw a flicker of doubt in the eyes of a few guests. The LLC was in my name. The signature did look like mine. Grant was a master manipulator, and even in chains, he knew how to plant a seed of uncertainty. Then, a cane hit the floor. It wasn't a stumble, it was a slam. Henry Caldwell stepped forward. He stood fully upright, his shoulders squared, the tremors and the confusion of the last week evaporating like mist. He looked at the police officers, then at the crowd, and finally, he fixed his gaze on Grant. "Stop talking, Grant," Henry said. His voice was not the thin, wavering whisper of a senile old man. It was the deep, gravelly baritone of the man who had built a real estate empire from nothing. "You are embarrassing yourself." "Henry," Grant gasped, switching tactics instantly. "Henry, listen to me. I was trying to protect your assets. Brooke is confusing you. She is twisting everything." "I am old, Grant," Henry said, cutting him off with a surgical precision. "I am not stupid." A collective gasp went through the room. Celeste put a hand to her throat, her eyes widening. "You thought because my hands shake and I forget a name now and then, that I was empty inside." Henry continued, walking slowly toward Grant. "You thought I was a husk you could just hollow out and live in. But I knew the moment you walked into my study 3 days ago and told me the bank made a mistake with the wire transfer. I was helping you," Grant stammered. "You were grooming me," Henry corrected him, "and you were doing a poor job of it." Henry reached into the inside pocket of his tuxedo jacket. He pulled out a folded document, the same power of attorney papers Grant had been trying to force him to sign all night. "I have been working with the district attorney for 48 hours, Henry announced to the room. He gestured toward Paige Moreno. "We let you think you were winning. We let you think I was losing my mind, because we needed you to bring this." Henry held up the document. "This is what he wanted me to sign tonight," Henry said, his voice ringing clear. "He told me it was for tax protection. He told me it was to save the house. But listen to this clause on page 4. Henry put on his reading glasses, the ones Grant had tried to hide from him earlier, and read aloud. "The agent, Grant Hale, shall have the unilateral authority to determine the medical competency of the principal, Henry Caldwell, and to admit said principal to a long-term care facility of the agent's choosing, restricting communication if deemed medically necessary." Henry lowered the paper. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the champagne buckets. "He wasn't going to protect me," Henry said, looking at his daughter, Celeste. "He was going to lock me away. He was going to put me in a home, drug me into silence, and drain the accounts while he lived in Switzerland with his girlfriend. That is what you invited into our home. Celeste." Celeste looked like she was going to be sick. She looked at Grant, horror finally breaking through her denial. "Grant, is that true? You were going to commit him?" "It is standard legal language," Grant shouted, sweat pouring down his face. "It is a boilerplate contract. Henry, you are reading it wrong." "And the flight?" I asked from the balcony. "Is the one-way ticket to Zurich standard language too?" Grant opened his mouth, but no words came out. The trap was welded shut. And then, the final crack appeared. Sienna, who was still on the floor where Grant had pushed her, slowly pulled herself up. Her silver dress was torn at the hem. Her makeup was smeared. She looked at the man she had worshipped, the man she had betrayed her own blood for. "You said," Sienna's voice was a broken whisper, "you said if I signed the bank papers, the tax audit would go away." Grant's head whipped around. "Shut up, Sienna." "You told me it was just a formality," Sienna screamed, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "You told me to wear the scarf. You told me to practice Brooke's signature. You said we had to move the money to the LLC to hide it from the IRS until the audit was over. You never said it was for her." She pointed a shaking finger at the screen, where the name Elena Ricci still glowed in high definition. "I did everything for you," Sienna sobbed. "I committed a crime for you. I signed those wire transfers." The entire room heard it, the confession. Paige Moreno stepped forward, nodding to the second officer. "Sienna Hale, please place your hands behind your back." "No!" Sienna shrieked as the officer approached her. "No! I am the victim! He tricked me! Brooke, tell them. Tell them I am stupid, not evil, please." She looked up at me, begging, the sister who had mocked my car, my job, and my life was now pleading for me to save her. "You are not the victim. Sienna," I said, my voice steady, "you are an accomplice. You knew you were forging my name. You knew you were taking Grandpa's money. You just didn't know you weren't going to get to keep it." The officer handcuffed Sienna. She slumped against him, weeping uncontrollably. Celeste looked around the room. She saw the faces of the elite, the people she had spent her life trying to impress. They were not looking at her with admiration anymore. They were looking at her with pity and revulsion. The bishop turned his back. The judge walked away. "This is a misunderstanding," Celeste tried to say, but her voice was weak. "We can explain. Grant has a stress disorder." "Mother, stop," I said. "Just stop." Grant made one last noise, a guttural growl of frustration. He tried to jerk away from the police, perhaps thinking he could make it to the French doors and run into the night. "Don't even think about it," Paige said, stepping into his path. "We have your passport, we have your accounts frozen, and thanks to your wife's confession just now, we have you for conspiracy, fraud, and solicitation of forgery. You aren't going to Zurich, Grant. You are going to federal prison." The officers began to haul him toward the door. As they dragged him past Henry, Grant dug his heels in. He looked at the old man one last time. "I made you look important," Grant spat. "I managed your image. You were nothing but a hardware store owner before I polished you up." Henry looked him in the eye. "I was a hardware store owner," Henry agreed. "And I built a life that was real. You are a financier who is wearing a rented tuxedo and going to jail. I think I know which one of us is important." The police shoved Grant through the doors. The flashing lights of the cruisers outside bathed the ballroom in chaotic bursts of red and blue. Sienna was led out behind him, still sobbing, her head hanging low. The room was left in a stunned vacuum. The music was gone. The image was gone. Just the wreckage of a family that had been held together by glue and greed. I walked down the stairs from the mezzanine. The crowd parted for me. They looked at me with a new expression. It wasn't disdain. It wasn't pity. It was fear. They realized that the quiet schoolteacher in the cheap suit had just taken down the biggest predator in the room. I walked straight to Henry. He looked tired. The energy of the performance was fading, leaving him looking his age. But his eyes were bright. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. Henry took my hand. His skin was paper thin, but his grip was strong. "I am sorry, Brooke," he said. "I am sorry I let them make you feel small. I am sorry I didn't see it sooner." "It is over now," I said. "They treated you like a pack mule," Henry said, his voice trembling with emotion. "Someone to carry their burdens, someone to take the blame, someone to be used." He squeezed my hand. "You are not anyone's mule, Brooke," he said. "You are a thoroughbred, and you just won the race." I felt the tears prick my eyes, the first tears I had allowed myself to shed in days. It wasn't the vindication of the crowd that mattered. It wasn't seeing Grant in handcuffs. It was this. It was being seen. "What do we do now?" I asked. Henry looked around the empty ballroom, at the wasted champagne and the shattered illusions. He looked at Celeste, who was sitting on a chair in the corner, staring blankly at the wall, realizing she was truly alone. "Now," Henry said, "we go get some dinner, somewhere cheap, somewhere that serves pie." "I know a place," I said, smiling. "It is in my neighborhood. They don't have valet parking." "Perfect," Henry said. He took my arm. We walked out of the ballroom, past the frozen guests, past the ruin of my mother's social life, and out into the cool night air. I didn't need to know what would happen at the trial. I didn't need to know how many years Grant would get, or if Sienna would get a plea deal. I didn't care about the gossip that would tear through Charlotte tomorrow morning. The knot was untied, the debt was paid, and as I walked toward my beat-up sedan with my grandfather on my arm, I knew the most important truth of all. I wasn't the extra child anymore. I was the only one left standing. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening while driving to work in London, cooking dinner in Texas, or relaxing in a cafe in Hanoi? Please leave a comment below and share your location and your thoughts on Grant's downfall. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel. Hit the like button and smash that hype button to help this story reach more people. Your support means the world to me.